one part of the book that I also found very interesting was how you addressed not just the importance of AI and ML and data science to the average business today, but also how it's now has become a common part of what cloud providers offer in their marketplaces, and how clouds offer a natural environment for the type of storage and data processing that these type of systems need to do. Can you share with us some of your experiences with clients, implementations you've seen, or some that may be planned that are utilizing this? And what's your opinion about the current state of that with what cloud providers currently offer and where it's going?
Yeah, I'll kind of answer those backwards. I mean, the cloud providers have their own native offerings that they offer in the state, and those are well known on the different hyperscalers that are there. And they also provide a marketplace where we're seeing the same AI providers that are operating across clouds. Obviously, I like the cross-cloud solutions better than the ones that are native because we're able to do more with them, able to operate them across different cloud providers. I can implement a knowledge engine across different cloud providers. For example, if I use an AI provider that's able to leverage across cloud services. The cloud providers are going to make out like bandits on this. And I wrote about this it's no news because, number one, they win either way because they provide the AI capabilities and you have to pay to use those services, which people will pay because it's a lot cheaper than running them on premise. Believe me, I've done both. And even some of the marketplace services, where there's a huge amount of data storage and huge amounts of CPU horsepower that has to go into running these things moving forward. So that market's going to evolve fairly quickly because I think the cloud providers are seeing this now, that's a huge win-win for them, no matter where this stuff goes. And so people are going to consume storage and compute, and certainly AI cycles and suddenly GPUs and TPUs rental on the cloud providers are just going to go way up. And I think that's a great thing moving forward. That's where the state-of-the-art cloud stuff exists. Certainly the generative AI stuff, it was originated and kind of grew on the cloud. So it's not an on-premise system anymore. It all lives out there. People are going to provide these capabilities. It's just kind of confusing where the services are and how to leverage them. I think that's the biggest thing right now. We know how to use a chatbot and talk to ChatGPT and have it write apology letters for us and things like that. Now it's all well and good, but your ability to kind of put this into, some sort of a business state where it's able to make money is a different thing entirely. And I think that's where the confusion is right now. And so the cloud providers are doing a good job in selling this stuff because they do see the win-win. I think as consumers of the technology, we have to understand its viability and its correct application. Right now, I think the biggest fear I have with AI is misapplication of it, and therefore making applications that should, cost $2 million to develop, $10 million to develop because we AI enabled it. And now it costs twice as much to run, and it costs 4 times, 5 times as much to build. And there is no business value that comes out of it. And that's the big thing moving forward. We have a tendency to overemphasize the value of AI. Maybe that's from, 2001: A Space Odyssey or whatever. But, the how factor, I call it. But these things need to have a pragmatic role in our particular applications. And that typically is going to be something a little less than what we need to expect from them. So they're going to automate supply chain applications, make decisions about, risk analytics in terms of making investments, in terms of banking systems, and these things that we've been leveraging AI systems for years. Now, they have gotten better, and certainly the generative AI technology is impressive. But my concern is overemphasis of the technology and selling it into the space where it has a tendency not to have as much value. And that's kind of blasphemy with, the people who are, all in with AI. And I think that's great. I was an AI programmer as my first job out of college, a Lisp and M1. So if we're going to leverage this technology effectively, it has to have a good business case. And that has to be led by the cloud providers moving forward to get the original, spirit of your question. So if they're going to leverage and sell this technology, it has to have deep and easy integrations into other application development technology moving forward, and also define what the use cases are and how they need to be leveraged. Right now, I think people know that it's cool, know that it's impressive, but don't know what to do with it. Like I said, other than the ChatGPT stuff that people are writing yourself on the Dolly stuff. I think it's going to automate a lot of information-oriented jobs, and that was coming up. We've been dealing with that for the last 200 years. Automation always shows up and displaces human beings. We just find more interesting and better things to do. And I think that's going to be a factor moving forward. We have to deal with the ethics of that. But moving forward, I think what we're going to see in the next 2 or 3 years is going to be misplacement of this technology and using it in ways that it really was never designed to do that. And it's, but we do that as a technology group, as IT. In IT, I view it as, a child's soccer match. They have no strategy. They kick the ball in one direction. Everybody runs in that direction. And so, back in our day, it was everybody ran to client server. Everybody ran to distributed objects. Everybody ran to service-oriented architecture. And some of these things have value, some of them don't. And everybody ran to cloud, and now everybody's running to AI, even though that technology has been around since the 50s. And the concern there was there has to be some pragmatic use and understanding of how this technology fits. And so cloud is going to be the only way to consume AI. In fact, cloud kind of drives me crazy because it is computing. We don't run on other platforms as much anymore. 9 times out of 10, we're running things in the cloud. That's where the innovation is occurring. So whether you like it or not, you're going to end up in the cloud because that's where the money's being spent. People are building a marketplace there. But the ability to kind of look at this and use them in viable and scalable ways is going to be the big thing that we're looking to solve. And I think that's going to be something that we're going to have to think more about moving forward. Right now, I just see misapplication of the technology right and left. Hey, we're using this thing to, build a sales order transaction system. Well, why? There's no reason for doing that. I mean, if you're doing credit checks as part of that, but that's another system that you're building that should be aligned to that system, that should not be embedded in that system. As a good architect, we want to put those things off into reusable domains. That's what service-oriented architecture was all about. So it may end up costing us more money in the long run with a lot of the mistakes that are being made. That's the largest concern. It's going to revolutionize a lot of businesses. People are going to leverage it in very innovative and unique ways. I think that's coming, but that's been happening around the AI space for years. I think the more we're going to see more mistakes than successes in the market going forward. I'm sorry, I'm more of a pragmatist there. I think a lot of the AI people would disagree with me, but I've been in this space a long time where I've seen adoption of new technology that's done so in weird and odd ways where it doesn't have the value, and we just end up course correcting, down the path. Fortunately, that's going to course correct after misspending billions of dollars, but that's kind of what we do in IT.
Well, but the fact that AI systems, the data science environment that comprises an AI system in terms of processing, compute logic, data storage, the fact that that's now somewhat being commoditized via cloud provider offerings, it can support business cases because it's more accessible, perhaps more economical, more easily something that can be adopted because the cloud provider serves it all up and says, here it is, go for it. So on one hand, it can support a business case, but on the other hand, it is resulting in exactly what you just described, which is it's too easy for organizations just to jump in now and make mistakes with it, invest in something they may not need, impose changes on their systems that customers may not want, and then have to backpedal at some point to rectify that. So it's really just understanding the nature of AI separately from the fact that it's available via a cloud marketplace, and properly positioning that within your business, within your IT enterprise, and your ecosystem, seeing where it's absolutely necessary and not, and then proceeding based on making those educated decision points. But the fact that it is now so readily accessible via cloud environments, I guess, makes organizations a bit more trigger happy in that regard. Yeah,
I mean it's the flavor of the month. It's so, and obviously cloud's always going to be systemic to all this, but we've kind of seen this movie before. Certainly the rise of SOA, and you lived through that, and the rise of client server and all these other things I just discussed. What's unique about AI is that it's been around conceptually and as a technology for a long time, conceptually since the 50s. It predates me, and I'm 60 years old. But as far as the technology goes, it's been kind of in and out. We've fell in love with it. Certainly, we did that in the '80s when it first came out. I worked in that space for a time, and then we pushed it off, figured it out, didn't have the value moving forward. Kind of trickled back in through the rise and commoditization of the service, and then when cloud came forward, it finally made it accessible and economically viable for people to leverage the technology in proper ways. And I think it's been growing in popularity for good reasons. I just think we have a tendency to overconsume and misunderstand the proper use of the technology. So what I would say to the cloud leaders out there is just make sure we're quelling not necessarily excitement around it, but we're looking at the applications, how it's going to be leveraged. Because I think in many instances, it's misapplied. And very much I see people spending way more money on these applications than they need to spend, and then getting to an under-optimized state, which is going to hurt the business. And you notice I wrote in the book, everything was about returning business value. And if we're not able to do that using the technology, then it's not going to occur. I understand the innovation advantage of it and the ability to kind of do some cool stuff, but sometimes there's cool stuff that's going to provide value back to the business. Lots of things AI systems can do to make that happen. Supply chain optimization, is one of the things that comes to mind, healthcare diagnostics. Those are amazing technologies that are going to save lives and provide us with some better optimization moving forward. But in many instances, we don't have enough architects out there and people who understand the technology, its viability, and can look at a particular problem and look at how this technology applies. People are making emotional decisions and moving this forward. And I'm seeing many instances where people are calling up and they're saying, yeah, we're going to start building AI applications. And I'm like, what application are you going to build? How can you know you're going to leverage AI? It used to be the old days when people said we're going to build AWS. We're going to have an AWS cloud project. How do you know that's the right cloud? How do you know AI is proper for those applications? Have you done any analysis and thinking for it? So it's just kind of amateur night with many instances and people thinking about it. But, I've kind of, stopped wagging my finger years ago. People are going to do what they're going to do. I just hope they seek out the right advice and make sure they understand the value that this technology can bring. It's hugely innovative, hugely game-changing, but only if you apply it in the right space, or else it's going to be hugely cash-burning and hugely failing and could take your business down.
I fully agree. I'm just curious, because you're so in touch with where cloud computing technology is evolving toward, beyond cloud providers offering vanilla AI environments that their cloud consumer clients can then just use as they see fit. Do you see any progress with regards to cloud providers building AI functionality, AI autonomous decision logic into their own on-demand provisioning, rapid provisioning, their own automation systems? Are you seeing any interesting innovation in that regard?
Yeah, that's a great question. Not as much as I'd like to see. I do see auto provisioning systems and auto scaling systems, auto balancing systems, that are leveraging aspects of AI. Used to be just round robining mechanisms that we're leveraging. We're still doing those today, by the way. So I would love them to see AI if you're to leverage heuristics and telemetry and analytics that comes off these systems, so they can make the right decisions as to allocating those environments. I mean, the problem with that is it's going to take control out of the cloud users. They want to allocate a server other than the serverless stuff and hold on to it until they release it. And that server is configured with their technology, and they want things like that. We should have AI capabilities to size those things up, because 9 times out of 10, they're oversized, and 9 times out of 10, they leave them running forever, and they have to pay the bills on these things. I see it all the time. So I would like to see AI kind of layer into the FinOps stuff, and the FinOps become more operationally focused. So in other words, if I'm having a FinOps system, we're able to manage the financial and the cost of this particular environment, even do so on a cross-cloud system. It would be great to leverage AI capabilities to size the system specifically based on the profile of the application, the behavior of the application. No reason that FinOps system couldn't run an application in a sandbox to look at the amount of memory that it's requesting, database I/O that it's requesting, network bandwidth that it's requesting, then automatically size an instance that's perfectly sized for that particular application, which is going to be something that's near 100% efficient. It's never going to be 100% efficient, but it's near 100% efficient right now people are just thinking through those things, on their own and not necessarily making the right decisions. But the cloud providers are going to leverage this technology to sell the technology, and people are going to want these capabilities. I'm sure we're going to see this at the next reInvent. Huge amounts of AI capabilities that are built into resource allocation, built into database management. Certainly the serverless stuff is a step in the right direction. Those are kind of auto scaling and auto descaling. So you're normally not going to leverage more resources than you need. Okay, leverage service where you're able to make serverless decisions around AI capabilities. I may even have some of that in there today. I haven't heard about it yet, but it could be. That's going to be advanced and really kind of go down to the user. But I would like to make this stuff really just kind of brain dead simple for people who are leveraging infrastructure. Because what drives me nuts is they put the control into the hands of the cloud users, and they're making misconfigurations and allocating too many resources and not enough resources, and the systems are failing, all those sorts of things, where it's fairly easy to put an automation layer around that to kind of protect them from making those mistakes, at least initially moving forward. A lot of that stuff is getting better. Formation systems and the ability to deal with cluster management systems and auto scaling systems, part of that. But there's still not enough automation capabilities in there that I really would like to see that I think the cloud providers can provide. And so they can certainly look to the AI capabilities to make that happen. Like I said, I think next reInvent, we're going to see a lot of multi-cloud announcements from the different cloud providers, where they're able to provide cross-cloud services, where they didn't do that in the past. And we're going to see automation that's occurring with some of the AI-powered systems that they didn't do in the past. And that should be a step in the right direction. You have to look as to what costs them money and what doesn't, and investments being made. So they may end up spending $200 million on these systems, where they may end up losing them money because it's able to run them in a more efficient state, so people aren't making as many costly mistakes and therefore not making as much revenue. So holding them to the ethical standard that they're going to build those sorts of things and do the step in the right direction, and also put in the minds of the people who are consuming cloud, ask for this stuff. Hey, well, how come you guys aren't dealing with this? I don't want to sit down and allocate this stuff based on a changing application moving forward. Why don't you look at the behavior and the characteristics of my application and then auto provision the resources I need to make it happen? Well, they say that's serverless, but I need to have this with all my other thousands of lifted and shifted applications that aren't enabled for serverless systems. How do you do it in those instances? And in growing data and growing applications, how do I align my spending directly with my growth of those systems? And how do I hook this into my financial management system, my FinOps system, to make sure I don't go over budget or start doing dumb things? And how do I make sure I'm not adding additional security risk? And all those things can be automated using AI and other capabilities. I just see the cloud providers needing to do that on behalf of the users, not the users doing that on behalf of the cloud providers. So it's a good point.
And it's a really interesting convergence that we're witnessing right now, based on what you documented with the advent of the meta cloud model and the advent of increased AI enhancements within cloud provider environments, how that may converge into smart meta models, smart meta abstraction layers, and then whether you want to put the trust of that intelligence in a cloud provider, or perhaps have that also abstracted to maintain some neutrality in terms of the algorithms and so on. I know some of these are predictions based on where you've seen things go in the past, where you see things now, and where you see things going from a common sense perspective. And this is the last question, David, I promise. The reality of where things evolve to doesn't always follow the path of common sense. And there are other influences, competitive markets, and whatever the influences may be. Are there realities at play that you could see, whether it's delaying or inhibiting this type of progress that we need in the industry, or not? Do you see a relatively clear path for this?
Give me an example.
Well, if we're working toward a model where we're abstracting away from cloud provider dependence, and we've seen historically cloud providers, the mega super cloud providers, grow to such an extent that they dominate the market. The common sense to me is abstracting away from that for the benefit of the business but I see resistance to that from cloud providers because then they lose the ability. It forces them into a more competitive type of market, especially if we get to some point in the future where AI logic can determine the best place for even the most minute resource to be deployed here or there, and for billing to occur from here or from there. So that to me is a common sense model, but are there realities that may prevent that from happening?
Yeah, great question. I think that the writing's on the wall for the providers. They have to go the way of the market. They don't make the market unto themselves. They're still not that big. And if they do consider themselves that big, but the market has a tendency to normalize, they'll end up losing share moving forward. So they have to live up to market expectation. If those expectations are to work and play well with these meta cloud layers, then that's what they're going to have to live up to. Number one, there may be they have to provide interfaces of these various systems. If they're changing those interfaces just to screw up those meta cloud layers, then that's going to not bode well for them in the market moving forward. People will see that rather quick and vote with their dollars. And the cloud's great. You can just click away. You can be move off a cloud in a very short period of time. So I don't see that coming up, but I do see the reality is that everybody's in it for their own selfish reasons. And you kind of have to consider that. And that's not a bad thing. I think, if you work for a company, you're there to live up to basically maximize the value of the company through revenue changes and things like that. So they're going to move in a direction that's not necessarily in the best interest of their users in many instances. It's going to be in the best interest of them. So if we are moving into a meta cloud model, you can guarantee someone's going to figure out a way to make money off of that in a certain way, or maybe have certain services that don't have interfaces to them, have to be used using whatever native interfaces, and that's the only way to get at the value of the service. It better be a very compelling service, because people will vote not to use that service if they put those capabilities in them. But they're looking at, again, their viability in the marketplace, their ability to make money, not necessarily the value that it brings back to the users. And that's not the way companies think. And again, it's not a problem with that. So you always have to think about that. I do see standards kind of rising. We don't see it as much as we did in the past, but rising up, and then the vendors adhering to these standards, which kind of freezes the market, because everybody waits for these standards to emerge and they never do. So if they go, well, we have a meta cloud standard, we're going to work with all the cloud providers to create a meta cloud standard. It's what a meta cloud needs to be, and everybody's going to build different components of that. And we think it's going to be the ultimate way of making it happen. And here's a paper that we just wrote that's going to explain how this happens. Everything's genius. And they wait for the standard to emerge. It never does, because they end up infighting because they're at different ends, because they're trying to get to different value points moving forward. We saw this with lots of standards organizations in the past, where people were turning tables over, in the meetings. That can be a problem. And I think some of that's going to emerge moving forward. I haven't seen it happen yet, and people are a little bit more skeptical than they were 10 years ago, but you are going to see aspects of that moving forward. Fortunately, I don't think there's a single market maker that's really can dictate the market. We have, several people that are very strong players and certainly determine where the market's going, and they're running conferences with hundreds of thousands of people that go to them and things like that. But they're still going to have to live up to the larger market moving forward. What I do see is proprietary things start to merge back into our environment. So open systems, obviously free and open source and things like that. But the value of open systems is they typically won't change to their own desires change. They're going to live up to the needs of the community, not necessarily of the needs of a particular company. But I do see proprietary things start sneaking up. We're going to see things in industry cloud-based things where it's a proprietary schema that only they can leverage. They have a copyright on it. So it's going to be difficult for people to derive instances off of those schemas to change it for their own particular custom needs. Same with the applications in there, things like that. So many instances, people are going to build systems off of using these services that exist on industry-specific clouds or software clouds or things that exist within public cloud providers, and they're not allowed to take them off in their own directions. They're going to be limited by user agreements, proprietary technology of not providing those capabilities. And we saw that it happens. It happened in the past. It's going to happen now. We saw that with as people were building enterprise systems, for whatever reason. I'm not going to name any names, but they were proprietary and people had to live up to the needs of that system. They had to build around that thing as a platform. I think that a lot of market makers that are going to start to emerge, whether it's around industry specific stuff or other things, are going to start playing that same game. In other words, we have a solution. We view this as the most valuable solution. You have to live up to our rules and regulations if you want to leverage this solution. Companies have a tendency to kind of chase that if they view it as the path of least resistance. And that ends up costing them more money because they can't make change to the system moving forward. So moving away from open standards, extensible standards, things that can't be changed, proprietary technology, getting into user agreements that, quite frankly, are confusing, and then paying more money for those solutions than we should pay. So that's the pragmatic downside of a lot of this stuff. But I don't think it's anything new. I think it's the same stuff we've been dealing with for years, and we can just kind of look out for it, look at the evils of the past, and just kind of make sure we don't start digging the same holes again. But I'm always looking out for those sorts of things moving forward. Maybe I'm a glasses half empty kind of a person, but we have a tendency to revisit that stuff in the marketplace. We just have to be diligent in making sure we don't fall in the same traps.
Well, very well said. I couldn't agree more. And it'll be really interesting to see. David, I want to thank you so much for you providing so much time for us today to delve into these topics. I know you're super busy. And this book, I have no doubt, will become a must-read for any organization and a Bible of sorts for those who really want to chart a path of business value with cloud computing, because there's such a broad range of insights here that I don't see an industry or a type of business to which this would not apply. So this was much needed in the industry. I think there'll be a great sense of relief that it's out there. And we hope you write another book like this really soon.
Yeah, we're talking about that. We'll see if I have another one in me. I didn't think I'd write any more books. I'm glad I wrote this one. Thanks to you.
David, thank you so much. The book is an insider's guide to cloud computing. It's been a top-selling book on Amazon now and was just recently released. I highly recommend you pick it up. And David, thank you again.
Thank you very much, Thomas.